Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of our online audience. May peace be upon you, and to all our Muslim viewers, Salam Lebaran. Thank you for spending your Heritage Weekend with us at the Malay Heritage Centre on this fourth and last talk for the series. This series of talks has been organized as part of the Singapore Heritage Fest, and what better way than to spend a lazy Sunday afternoon than with us and to learn more about our culture, our health and well-being. My name is Saiful, and I am a medical practitioner by training. Today's topic is a lot on health and wealth and well-being, and I think it will be a very interesting topic to discuss later on. Yes. The Malays of Singapore are made of a lot of varied ethnic groups. They can be Minangkabau, Javanese, Buginese, Bawenese, Acehnese, even, and many more. But for the purpose of today's talk, and for the concept about being Malay, the term subsumes this whole ethnic identities, and this shall form the background to today's talk. So for today, we shall be talking about sense, and sensibilities, and the Javanese approach to wellness. In delivering this talk will be a good friend of mine, Surya Kencana Omar, who is a Malay Singaporean of Javanese descent. Before I go into his background, for any questions, do feel free to ask and participate by going on to the QR code, okay, that will be shown on the screen right now. And from there, you can actually type the questions, and it will be shown to us directly, and we shall answer it as best as we can with Mr. Surya here. So, back to Mr. Surya and his background. Mr. Surya is the co-founder of the Javanese Singaporean Facebook group, and is among the country collaborators and coordinators for the Javanese Diaspora Network. He is also a director of By Definition Private Limited, which is a company that offers cultural heritage education. His honors and master's thesis were on Javanese rituals, and he will be embarking on his PhD soon, and that will further explore the cultural and heritage ecosystem. Yesterday, he had just delivered a talk on nasi ambeng, and we were joking that the nasi tumpeng was for you, right, in starting your PhD. Congratulations on that, yes. So, in today's talk, he will then expand his other approaches and matters related to the Javanese concept of well-being. For now, I shall let Surya take the talk. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Saiful. I'm glad to be here again in this Sunday afternoon. Yeah, I need to remember it's Sunday afternoon. It's 4:30 plus. I will be sharing today about senses and sensibilities. Having shared quite a lot about traditional Javanese medicine, specifically on jamu, for the past 2 or 3 years to schools, and most recently with National Heritage Board at Wisma Geylang Serai and our Tampines hub. I thought that I wanted to expand the scope a bit when I was asked to share a bit more about traditional Javanese medicine. So I decided to bring about this topic on senses and sensibilities. I hope it's a sensible thing to do, and that you are able to follow through with me as I share about it. My journey coming here has been a long one, something that I didn't project or envision. It comes from my mother. I think earlier today you met my older sister, who shared that a lot of our knowledge is from our mother, yeah, Madam Siti Saleh. So you can see at the picture there On the leftmost is me, my sister, Robia, and my brother during Republic Police complementary and alternative medicine technology day, where for the first time I was able to bring both my sister and my late mother together to share their knowledge about traditional Javanese medicine. That was sometime in 2009. Moving forward with Bidirectional Private Limited, I started to share the concept of the kitchen as pharmacy, or dapur saya sebagai pharmacy, as a way to bring back the idea of the traditional kitchen and how the traditional kitchen has ingredients that we can use as remedies. So, and it grown over the years, such that now we have quite a regular session with National Heritage Board. So, moving on, for today's session, I will expand beyond what I've usually shared. If you are interested in more about jamu, you can watch the video that is available on the Singapore Heritage site, or join me for the coming workshops under NHB at our Tampines Hub and Wisma Geylang Serai, which will be happening in June and July. So now we'll just move forward to have something to share. I always believe that although this is an online session, I always believe that it's better to show real things than just pictures on slides. So what we have here, okay, I need the slides. Yeah, I need the slides. Okay, if you look on my left here, my left here, which is on your right, will be all the ingredients about jamu that I share during the introduction to jamu workshop. So there are about 12 or 13 ingredients and its uses. And then the center here, I will talk a bit more about this later on. On the left here is the main key ingredients for jamu kunyit asam, for which the video in the Heritage, Singapore Heritage Fest site has a video of me sharing about how to make jamu kunyit asam. And then here is something that the key ingredients for lulur. And then this is all for the later discussion on oils and poultices. Then more towards my right, then we have the flower bath, and towards the end is the burning of incense. So, but generally, what I want to focus on now is on the jamu. So jamu is basically herbal medicine, right? So it can be a drink, an infusion, a form of distillation, or brew or paste. Okay, and in the book that I shared, jamu is one of the, I think it's the only book in English that talks about jamu. Of course, if you can read Bahasa Indonesia or you can read Malay, there will be much more references that you could refer to, especially the epic story Serat Centini that tells the story of a few characters, but in between the story is where you get an idea of the traditional medicine and traditional practices that occur at a period of time. It was written sometime, if I'm not mistaken, in the early 19th century, right? So that's basically jamu. Then in our introduction to jamu workshop, I tend to share this, and the reason why I always prefer face-to-face, because if you look at all of the 12 ingredients here, they look the same. The only way, some of them, yeah, you can distinguish them based on the texture of the skin, right? A bit of the coloring, if you're well trained. If not, then sometimes I still do struggle. But what will be useful in the workshops that we do when we can do face-to-face is that to recognize the jamu ingredients that we use based on the smell. And that is why the title is on sense. You need to smell it to know, to recognize, and also to know whether the jamu ingredient is suitable to be used, to be made into a concoction, a blend, or or poultice and so on. So breaking down, touching it, smelling it is one of the key things that, even when I go to my main supplier in Geylang Serai for all these ingredients, and sometimes she also needs to break it to look inside to see whether it is suitable to be used. So this is kunyit hitam. A good one will have a kind of a bluish tinge around here. But if you look at this stock or lot, it is very pale, right? And the smell is not so strong. If only there is a technology to enable those of you at home to smell it as well. Hence, I just want to touch this. If you want to know more, do sign up for the workshop that is hosted by NHB, for which we introduce jamu. And if we can meet face to face, you can have the experience of smelling it, touching it, and recognizing the texture, because you have to be seen quite closely to know the differences in terms of the shape, in terms of the way, the lines or the roughness of the skin of the jamu ingredients. And the jamu ingredients that I show you here is just, they are more than this. Well, these are those below ground. In jamu concoction, herbal medicine, there are those that are above ground, right? Just like the stem here. This is the stem. Then there is the leaves, the seeds, and so forth. Okay. So these are the usual ingredients that we introduce, that you are able to smell. As you can see from the picture, it's quite difficult if you are not trained to know what is the difference. Okay, if I don't have the labels there, some of them look quite the same. So these are some of the benefits. I managed to put it into the table, which I will not dwell on too much for today. The reasons that I want to emphasize is that in jamu, it is not just about the drink. It's about the scent that comes with the infusion of the ingredients as well. So that is and then from there, when you drink it, if you are used to drinking, you can actually feel some of the effects. Senses. And if you want to know how to make jamu, I shared a really simple recipe that you can watch the video. All you need to do is go to the Singapore Heritage Fair site, type jamu, and you will come to this page, and then you can watch the video there, where I will show two basic formulas, right? So one of the most common questions that I get is, so I know about jamu, I've attended the workshop, how to get this? So here's a simple video that I have made. It is actually part of I attended a vlogging course, and this was a project that I do. So please forgive me for the amateurish and very simple video that I created to help people find their jamu ingredients. So enjoy this short video.
Bagus untuk perjalanan darah, jantung, kaki, mata, everything.
I received a lot of questions asking where can we find jamu ingredients, and this is where I'm going to show you. Come, let's follow me.
Jamu ni, actually kedai ni dah 4 keturunan. Daripada arwah Yud, Nyai, Mak dan turun pada kita. Kita semua alami hasil bumi yang Allah kasih. Cuma kita nak kena korek rahsia dia lah. Dengan perempuan, dia more into jamu wanita untuk sihat badan. Kalau lelaki, kita ada tukar ahli. Untuk kencing manis, we have ni misai kucing untuk dia minum, and dengan tunjuk langit untuk darah tinggi. Bila diorang dah tahu, ramai yang datang, especially air kunyit ni, khasiatnya untuk kolesterol, perjalanan darah, jantung. So on and off, they will come and look for this. Now I'm already 55. Memang terus terang badan akak memang besar lah, tapi so far kan tak ada penyakit. Akak rajin kan minum air kunyit dengan jamu-jamu ni.
Here you can see that there's a lot of jamu ingredients that can be found in this shop. And if you need any of your jamu ingredients, you can come over to City Flower Shop. Until we meet again, see you again. Okay, I hope that short, simple video will give you an idea of where to get the ingredients. And I bring this picture again. Yesterday I spoke a bit about nasi tumpeng and how there was a need for the ingredients to be in 4 basic types. You know, those plants that are below ground, plants above ground, and then about the poultry and cattle, plus those coming from the sea, the flora and the fauna. Similarly, in jamu, as I mentioned earlier just now, the ingredients that I show here tend to be more that you find underground, whereas in the earlier video, the lady who sells the jamu, she showed some of those jamu ingredients that are found above ground, like the leaves, the stems, you know, the seeds, and other. There's a lot actually. One thing I like to go there is to learn a lot from them. They are very open. They share very readily. Okay, so that is what we have about jamu. So where do we go from here? Since one of the things that I wanted to expand beyond the jamu was to show much more than people's idea or imagination that, oh, the wellness only comes from drinking such concoctions such as this. But there are other things, other practices in Javanese culture or Javanese heritage that adds on to that wellness, right? And one of the first things that I think some of us are familiar with is the burning of incense, right? This is actually the incense burner set that I inherited from my mother. So it has been, I think it's much older than me. So you can see that, it doesn't look that great. But what we have here are the usual things that burning of the incense. You have frankincense here. This is a higher grade. This is a lower grade. You have stangi, right? You have benzoin or the kemenyan. So kemenyan Arab and kemenyan. So these are things that we use to practice a lot, burning the incense mainly on Thursday night or in our context malam Jumaat. Because in the idea of time, for the Malays as well as the Javanese and those around the region, our day starts from the Maghrib or the dusk. So given that dusk is about 2 hours from now, which means that 2 hours or 3 hours from now, we are actually approaching to a new day. And because of that time concept, it really holds a lot of meaning when we say at the end of the day, because it is at the end of the day. Once the day is set, the sun is set, it starts a new day for us, right? And one of the things that the use or burning of incense is to, there are a few sets of belief. One, it says that it helps, people use it to invite spirits, jinns, and beings from the unseen. But there's also another set of understanding that this is actually a recommended practice where you burn the scent so that it permeates and fills the room with a very nice, calming smell. Much works in the way of our understanding today about aromatherapy. So while we have aromatherapy that get this diffuse, we get diffusers, we smell. In the past, it used a lot of heat in order to activate the scent to be permeated throughout the house, right? And one of the things that really, the turning point for me to be concerned about our traditional knowledge and about our heritage was when I was in my 3rd year at NUS, and they were introducing the new cross-faculty module. So what I did was I signed up for the module on insects and diseases, and it was during this lesson on the vectors for malaria when the lecturer described the behavior of the Anopheles mosquito that is a vector for malaria that it really hit me. Because one of the characteristics of the Anopheles mosquito is that their feeding time is in the evening, right? And they tend to rest on the walls and crevices in the house. And the only way to repel them is when you do some form of fumigation or smoke the house or fumigate the house with some things. Then there's another incident. When I was in the army, there was one night where I was conducting training, so we had an admin tent, and my encik CSM, he started to burn incense around me. Then I wonder what is he trying to do? And he was telling me, sir, this one I learned burning incense can repel the mosquito and the insects. And somehow it clicked. Me learning about insects and diseases, about the behavior of the Anopheles mosquito, and the use of incense to be able to repel mosquitoes, it got me thinking about the idea that you should not go out in the evening, especially for Javanese. So there's one idea of the Batara Kola, the Lord of Time, that likes to take small kids and individuals who tend to wander during dusk or in the evening. So usually they use the story of the Batara Kala to stop people from going out in the evening. And when we put all these pieces together in my head, I see the possible link that, hey, this kind of restrictions could be related to the idea that, we shouldn't go out in the evening, or we should burning incense because the malaria vector could be hanging around. It is still not tested whether this is true, but so far putting that pieces together made me rethink about traditional knowledge. It made me rethink about the times in which we discard traditional knowledge without fully understanding them and wondering what was the wisdom behind it that we have lost. And to say that, we follow tradition blindly, it is more of our own fault of not trying to understand that tradition and why it was there in the first place. And this opens up a lot of research opportunities to verify and find the link between the hard sciences and these traditional practices. And earlier today, my sister also shared the practice that my mom taught us or introduced to us, the idea of the gang, using the heat, for a postnatal treatment, using frankincense again to help improving the wellness of a woman that has just given birth. So these practices that I put together tend to use heat, to create the fumes and the smoke. So there is this use of heat, and it tends to have a wide and permeates and provide some level of wellness, be it keeping insects and mosquitoes away or improving the well-being of the body by burning of incense, as in this gang practice. In contrast, while we have heat here, there is also the Javanese practices of the flower bath. I can't have a bath here. I wish I could. It's been very humid, and I feel like jumping into the cold water. But I create a small little bath here, and these are the flowers that are usually used for the flower bath or mandi bunga. While the burning of incense is suggestive of, you call spirits, right? Burning of incense where you call spirits, right? The mandi bunga is to chase away spirits. Some say if you get disturbed by spirits, you want to chase away, you mandi bunga. And this is where you see the contrast of the heat and the cold. And usually we remember the heat and the cold, right? We remember the heat and the cold. We remember the coldness. Anyone who has gone through mandi bunga will remember the cold, floral smelling water that gets poured over you as you squat down, and then some prayers recited, hopefully, it kind of makes you feel better. So there's a heat, smoke, water, shockingly cold sometimes. My mother liked to do it in the morning. She wake me up, drag me out of bed, and just ask me to squat down, wear a sarung, take out everything else, and then she would just pour the whole water over me. Yeah, especially when I I was a naughty boy. So it kind of wakes me up a bit. So I think this gives the idea of wake up your ideas, right? So, but again, another thing when I learned about Bach flower remedies, then I say, hey, there is somebody else from another part of the world that recognizes the value and the benefit of floral scents and bathing in it. So it is not just isolated practice, but a kind of wisdom that can follow through, across oceans and across time. And when I think again about the practice or the burning of incense, beyond the spiritual or mystic beliefs surrounding it, and looking at the possibility that could be there to ensure to repel insects and mosquitoes, could the flower bath also be a way to clear the mind? Because part of the benefit is to clear the mind, clear any disturbance that you have in your mind, and also invigorate you. The idea of, I think there are research done where, putting your face in a cold water, it has some effects on the body. And with this, just the burning of incense and the flower bath itself, we can see the use of heat and cold that aims to improve the situation and the condition of the mind and the emotion, right? In the mind of emotion. And then in contrast, you have the burning of incense, which the scents permeate towards the environment, even the ganggang, the environment of the external body, right? But when we look at the flower bath, it is very individual. You get poured over, and you are the only one who experience it then, and that experience is actually internal when you feel the sudden cold, and plus after that the floral scent to actually wake up your ideas. So in this experience, there is that idea of the sense. The sense becomes very important, be it in burning of the incense, how some of the like frankincense, it has been known to kind of allow people to concentrate, clear the mind. The same goes for the flower bath. So you have the smell, then the senses, the feeling of hot, the heat that comes with the burning of incense, especially for ganggang, to feel the heat, to bring back the heat to the body, and then you have the sense of coldness that comes with the flower bath. And the idea of sensibility, that's sensitive to the things around, because these are things that are usually done in order to make sense of what is happening in the world. Your mind is disturbed, something disturbs you, you're stressed, let's go for a flower bath, right? You feel that, you get disturbed by insects, you want to be safe, okay, let's do, or you want to have scents around the house to smell better, you want to, burn the incense and let the smell engulf and permeate to every single crevices of the house. And from there, I will go on into something that is a bit more external. So before that, I spoke a bit about jamu, right? And mainly, if you look at the jamu, there are some bottles or jamu drinks that are created. It's actually from nature. One of our partners in promoting this knowledge, right? So you have a few bottles here of kunyit asam and so forth. So this is tend to be internal. But beyond the internal, there is also the external oils. So here are two of my favorite oils. Is minyak tawon. I use this for a lot of swells. Just now, my hands, a bit of swelling, I couldn't bend, and I took advantage of the fact that my sister was still around. So she helped me to use the oils to remedy my joint hands. And this, the other favorite, is minyak telon, usually used for babies to help them release the air and calmness, right? So this is the oils. And the oils is not, and the thing that is external application is not just oils. These oils are not just oil, but they are also infused with a lot of other herbs and spices to help with the remedy. And behind the oils, what you have here is the lulur, right? Powder you just mix into water. And then you have the param, which is when you mix with water and you rub to the lurol is more to soften and make the skin more supple, whereas the param is to heat up and improve the circulation and makes, get the redness, the warmth to the skin. And this is the pillars in which my sister have shared earlier today about how it is important for postnatal to be rubbed onto the head to help to, in one way or another, to help ease any problem that you have with postpartum depression or any kind of emotional well-being. So you have the external aspect here. And over here, if the camera could just zoom into this portion with the bottle of honey here, these are the basic ingredients for lurol kunyit. So you have the kunyit here, which is a turmeric, and then the rice flour or beras, tepung beras. So by grinding this, the turmeric after you have skinned it, and then mixing it with the rice flour, you have your basic lurol that will end up looking like this. Right? It will end up looking like this. But one thing you can be assured when you do it yourself is that you know there are no other additional ingredients that are added. And then, so these are the two basic. You add honey when you want the formula of the lurol to be nourishing. Okay? Or you add cafe lime if you want the formula to be exfoliating. So that is something I learned from my sister about, while you have the basic ingredients with just turmeric and rice flour, by adding a third ingredient, you can decide whether is it for nourishing honey or for exfoliating to add lime. Right? Another formula, I put a question mark there because I don't know what's the name, but I know that there are two key ingredients, which is nutmeg and tamarind, or buah pala and asam. I don't have the examples here, but it was a formulation poultice that my mom taught me to prevent head swells when babies, toddlers run around, they get knocked. So when she created, one day when my daughter hit the head and she was around, she said, okay, in future if this thing happens, this is what you need to make. She tests, and as per the usual old ways, you just take a lump of the tamarind, put inside warm water, stir it, and then you take one or two fruits of the nutmeg, you pound it, and then you mix it up, and straight away you put onto the baby's head. In all the cases I've done, maybe not enough to say that it works, but for all my kids it works. The swelling, there was no swelling the next day. That it kind of prevent the swells, right? So this is how. So I shared this to show that there is more than just jamu drinks, right? As part of the whole wellness, we have also poultices and oils that can help to rub the swell. So even as I take the jamu to reduce my inflammation of my joints, I still rely on the oils to rub to hasten the recovery process. Okay, and we also provide this, workshops to students and schools beyond with, other than the work that we do with the National Heritage Board. So it is an overall effort to try to bring back this traditional knowledge. Again, as how we have seen earlier about the heat and the cold, when it comes to the more to the jamu side, we have the oils and poultices or paste that takes care of the external, and you have the jamu drinks that takes care of the internal, right? And both of these actually caters more to the physiology, your joints, your muscles, as contrasted to the earlier practices that was hitting more of your mind and emotions. Again, there is that sense, there's that senses of touch, the sense of touch, the sense of the taste of the warm or cold jamu, and then the sensibility. Why? Because you need to know what is your ailment, what are you struggling with, and decide whether should I drink this, or should I put this oil, or should I make this lulur, or should I make this param, should I use a lulur or param, do I want to exfoliate, or do I want to nourish, right? So there's a lot of knowledge that we need to grapple with and we need to understand so that this traditional knowledge can cater to a lot of our needs. Now that I've been standing here for very long, I think it's very long for me, so I need to sit back and pull this up, put this together nicely. So they're going to help me to push this back and kind of talk about the last aspect beyond the sense and senses and more about the sensibilities of understanding the complex nature of the world, right, as what we are facing today, and that is the Javanese practice of cultivating rasa. If you were to refer to the Javanese, English Javanese dictionary, the word rasa has many forms. It could be just taste, feeling, intuition, feeling comfortable in a place, being able to read between the lines, be able to read the context and the connotation. There are many variations of word of rasa that kinds of distinguish between different levels of getting the feel, right? So if, for example, someone who comes to Malay Heritage Center here and want to know what's the vibes, that is they are using their rasa to know what is the vibes of this place. Is it going to be an exciting place? And I hope it has been exciting listening to me, to be connected to me here. That is part of rasa. And I raised this idea of cultivating rasa or rasa itself because that is what that brings the sensibilities and putting all the various practices that I've shared with you earlier into a not so much a holistic, but an integrated system of taking care of your mind, your emotion, your physiology, your body, and your health, and your wellness. And I guess listening into some of the questions that was posed to my sister earlier, where they asked, what is a good massage therapist and what is not, it has to do with rasa as well. Because for me, if I were to do massage, I need to use my left hand to read the body. I do not know how, but it's a practice that is being cultivated. So the idea of the touch, the senses, in order to know the body that you are dealing with, to get a smell of the scent, to know the jamu ingredient that you're going to use, to decide which of the incense to burn, to how you want your house to smell. The intuition comes from cultivating this rasa. I have yet to be able to sit down, and I've been trying a lot to recall how my mother trained me to cultivate this rasa. It has been going on since young, right? And it's something that I'm still investigating. However, there is a book entitled Rasa that talks about this rasa in terms of sensitivity and being sensitive to music, in terms of the aesthetics, as in gamelan music and the performing arts, is the feel. So even for me, when I enjoy gamelan performance, I am not listening to the music, I am feeling the vibration of the gamelan performance. And that is something that can be cultivated. And when I read books on intuition and gut feeling, then I finally realized what my mother was actually trying to cultivate in me, in building that intuition and cultivating that rasa. So, how is it connected? I just say again, is that feeling of knowing, having all this knowledge, and that intuition of knowing when to do what and what are the things that you need to do, and that is where we talk about the sensibilities. And with that, I end my talk, my part, and I will take questions, if any.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much, Surya, for that enlightening talk. One disadvantage of not being here to our digital audience out there is that you cannot smell the nice aroma that's coming from this table here. And I really feel like, I'm relaxed, I feel nice, and essentially it comes from all the various ingredients that's over there for the jamu. So looking at this whole talk, in terms of context-wise, it is an excellent dive in looking at the other aspects about how the Javanese will approach wellness, and in that it involves the other senses apart from our sight and our hearing. So I think that combination of things like smell, things like taste, things like feel, tactile. So I think these three senses itself does have and play a large part in how this approach of Javanese well-being is. And I think for us out there, just in terms of background, I think is these other senses are not, I would say, is underappreciated. In my practice, I also do telemedicine, but I know that it is not enough because I can only see and hear the patient, but I cannot touch, I cannot, in a sense, smell. And those are also other things that can, are signs and symptoms that for me will be very important as a medical practitioner. So looking at this, there are quite a lot of questions. I think it's coming fast and furious. I think
Okay.
they can feel the energy.
Yeah,
you know.
and that's why I kept that
Yes.
main ideas and presentation short, so I can take in more questions and make this much more interactive
Yes.
than the one way of sharing. Let's have the first one.
So the thing is that in terms of background, okay, I think it relates to the perceptions of jamu or traditional Javanese medicine. I think this itself, the whole concept of traditional medicine itself, I think is underexplored. So as a third generation Javanese, okay, I used to think that the methods are kolot or linked to ilmu hitam. Okay, so kolot is not a it's got negative connotations. How do you remove that stigma to a modern audience and educate them otherwise?
I think the way forward, one of the things I always do when I run the workshop with students is that to encourage them to take this on as something they will explore and research. Because not much, whenever I search for research paper on jamu, yeah, we get that a lot in terms of very specific ingredients, like what is the use of turmeric and so forth, but seldom within a integrated or holistic approach to put it all together. So just like the stigma on mental health, the stigma on such traditional practices has to come with education, has to come with understanding, and to give a chance for some of these traditional practices to be understood, right, in the way that it hit me, like, hey, there is something to this burning of incense during the evening. It was totally not just for fun or for good smelling the house. Probably in the past, those who burn incense do not get less incidents of malaria, and in the past, you tend to look at illness in terms of being disturbed by spirits, and it weakens the body and make them susceptible. So that could be something along that line, and it was because of that kind of trying to link quite distant topics together in my head that drive my current desire to look at traditional knowledge. But when I went into what I thought was a small pond, it became a big ocean. And it's something that not one person can do. For example, when we come to traditional knowledge, after the earthquake in Jogja, where a lot of houses were destroyed, suddenly the newspaper all printed old manuscripts that talks about the use of bamboo for building houses. It was then that they understood really why were houses in the past built with bamboos, because when there's an earthquake, the house moves with the vibrations and seldom break down. So there's a lot that we need. For jamu itself, as part of my research with the Central Javanese Keraton of Surakarta, I asked the prince, what manuscripts you have about jamu? And he says, we have 2 volumes of a lot of formulas. So a few years later, I tried to come back to research, and then I was told something that is very worrying and actually made me feel very sad. They tried to take out a formula which has 25 ingredients, out of which more than half could no longer be found. right? So it is still in the jungle, and when I heard about the burning of the forest and some of this diversity could be destroyed, I kind of think about, okay, all those wisdom is gone. We don't even know what the plants look like. So there's a lot that needs to be researched, and it's vast. For every library that you see in all these old palaces, there are thousands and thousands and tomes of volumes, and it is for people in our community to learn because they are in Jawi, they are in old Javanese, you know, and for us to relate to our heritage and then go in there and learn. So there is a lot, there is a wealth of knowledge there that needs to be unearthed, and it's not for 1 or 2% to do it. We need to do it not only as a community, but as an entire region and society to explore our traditional knowledge.
Thank you for that answer, Surya. I think just a comment about what you mentioned about traditional knowledge and it being lost. There are many cures and medications that have come out of traditional observations. For example, I think the cure for malaria, quinine, came from the bark of a cinchona tree, and this was observed by the English to be used by the indigenous tribes to be a cure to alleviate fever in people with malaria. So it was discovered that it had pharmacological properties, and then they named it, and there are many, many such examples throughout history of how people had used traditional methods of medicine, and it being discovered as being something new and something that is beneficial for man. So looking at all this, there is a question about how can we incorporate or embrace traditional medicines and practices found in Southeast Asia or in Singapore also, rather than rejecting them for biomedicine and its technologies. I think it relates to how also our perception about it as well.
Okay, I think it starts with familiarity, and the attendance for the introduction to jamu has been quite promising and inspiring actually, when most of the audience were actually not from the Malay or Javanese communities, with members of other communities showing interest and wanting to know and find out more about the herbal formulations and what are the traditional ways to do this. I think for one of the things that I think came out very strongly is that discovery, you know, not really a discovery of the benefits of turmeric, right? Then suddenly the whole supplement market is filled with supplements that are infused with curcumin, the active ingredient in turmeric. So the embracing of it, of course, it takes effort. One of the things that I tried to do actually when I was at Republic Poly was, I'm a busybody, so I disturbed the School of Applied Science, and I look at their complementary and alternative medicine module, and I saw that there was nothing on traditional Malay or Javanese medicine. So I caught up with the person in charge of the module and proposed that, can I work with you to do one lesson to at least introduce students to because there was some form of Ayurvedic medicine being introduced, some form of TCM being introduced, so that is to get the young. And when I was partly involved, then I managed to generate an interest by a student group who, when we discussed to create the ice cream version of jamu beras kencur, and that was sometime in 2010, right? So this is some possibilities to look at new ways of presenting the formulas, but then again we have to look at the research, because how does the jamu ingredients react with dairy products that you need in ice cream, you know, that's why the next form is like the gelato type. And then in terms of its potency and shelf life, there's a lot that needs to be studied. There's a lot actually of potential to get into this field of traditional knowledge, and that is up to the young actually. It's up to the young to decide to pick it up, and this is something that I want to expand and explore. Because the research now on turmeric is only one, but just now I showed you there are about 10 or 11 or 12, right? So there is a lot of opportunities to go out and explore and discover new things. So getting the young, get them excited to, and And I think the part of excitement is to be at the wave. Because when I asked my mother, when she was still alive, what ingredient can be used for diabetic? And she said, use rotowali. When I did a search in the internet, the Dutch pharmaceutical companies have already begun to extract rotowali for part of supplements for diabetic patients. So to me is that we have all these plants actually that used to grow in our kampung houses. They are in front of us. But how much of this knowledge are we retaining and trying to keep and pass on to the next generation and enticing the young? So I think the young is first similar to the thing about stigma education, to showing that it is now contemporary because not many, that we need to rediscover them again. You are still at the forefront, you are being the pioneer of a new set of discoveries again.
Very, very interesting. I think the whole field about learning or understanding and research into phytochemicals are still a lot that is yet to be untouched. We think that we have a lot of knowledge, but actually with our tropical biodiversity, there's actually a lot of research that still needs to be done. I remember, I think also regarding this diabetes, I think there's this advice to take things that are very pahit, okay, which is not sour
Bitter,
but
yeah.
bitter tasting kind of fruits. For example, like petai, and and there are actually evidence to suggest and to show that actually they do contain certain phytochemicals that do reduce diabetes, in the sense that they reduce the absorption of all the carbohydrates, okay?
Yes.
And they are similar to alpha-glucosidase inhibitors, which for our audience out there is something that will help to break down the carbohydrates and thus thereby reduce the amount of absorption of sugar in the body by the intestine. So there is a lot of questions regarding the ingredients, and they're asking one question: what ingredients are in the yellow lulu powder? And also another question regarding this: are there any jamu ingredients with antibacterial or antimicrobial properties? That's
Okay,
yeah.
to this, I didn't touch a lot about that because I will tend to do that in the introduction to jamu workshops. I think for the one in June and July is very likely to be a online version, which means it's providing a larger audience space and also something that people could watch at the comfort of their homes. So in those sessions, we talk a bit more, but I'm not an expert so much into the benefits of individual ingredients. I'm much more familiar with things that I consume directly for myself, which is turmeric. And one thing I always caution myself is that there are many claims to benefits of ingredients. So if you go internet and you put jamu ingredients for antibacterial, you will come out with a list, right? And then you see a list of 10 items and you do not know what to do. So this is where for example, when I shared about City Flower Power, the shop, the sisters there, they have knowledge of the jamu ingredient, they know exactly what you may need, but you have to take this as your own responsibility to decide it's something that you need to consume, right? So I don't have that response directly, and I don't even want to say or suggest, because my advice to people usually for taking jamu for the first time is you need to try it out slowly. You need to see how your body responds to it. For example, I take kunyit asam, my body feels good, but you take it, you may not feel good. Just like any medicine, there are many types of painkillers. I've been taking a few types, and now I found one that kind of suits me and makes me, pain, while others will give me all kinds of other experiences. So in jamu, anything that you put into the body, you have to see how your body responds. And that is the reason why when you look for what can do antibacterial, you have come out a list, because you have to know how it suits to your body. And not only how it suits to your body, but how it interacts with the other ingredients. Because while a lot of the research is looking at very specific ingredients, if you look at jamu formulas and drinks, it tends to be in a combination of two. So for example, in konjac asam, it is an interaction between the properties of tamarind and turmeric. So when you just take the turmeric out and make it into a supplement pill, it may not have the combined experience of the interaction between tamarind and turmeric. So this is something that have yet to be fully investigated, looking at the interactions. So for example, when I make konjac asam, beras kencur on my own at home, based on my mother's formula, after a few days, it changes in terms of taste, it gets more pungent and so forth, but then it gives me a certain kind of kick that kind of stimulates my senses. And I could drink that, my stomach could handle that, but not someone who is not familiar with that. So I will not comment on very specific types. If you need, it's best that you meet up with the experts. There's a seller over there who can explain to you more. And each time I visit them, I learn a little bit more, right? And just like any kind of medicine approach, even you go doctors also, you come, you take certain medicine, it doesn't suit you, you come again, they change your medicine or they change your dosage. So it's the same thing. That doesn't mean just because traditional medicine is plants that you just think that you can just take one plant, extract it and then drink it and it will work for you. You still need to negotiate with how the essence of the ingredients interact with your body. And that is very important. And that is where you start to cultivate the rasa and the feeling and intuition to know what works and what doesn't work for you.
Excellent answer. I think just to add on, there are many, there's a lot of hard science that's behind all that. I think the pharmacological properties, how the certain chemical acts in the body, how it gets distributed, how it gets metabolized. I think that's a whole science and whole field by itself, and actually there are a lot of research that still needs to be done. I know your daughter is in chemistry, right?
Yeah, I'm hoping she will pick up something from here, and hopefully I'm still trying to persuade her to go into this line.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting, yes. Even his family is, looking to all these things. Okay, looking at moving on to the next question, we've covered that portion about, what jamu, the history and things like that. What do you think, are there any difference between traditional Javanese jamu and Malay medicine? Okay? The ideas of hot and cold are similar to Chinese medicine. Can you share us your thoughts?
Okay, this is something that was asked earlier. Yeah, we do have the idea of hot and cold, and I think similar to, okay, I just need to make a clause disclaimer. A lot of my knowledge on what appears to be traditional Javanese medicine like jamu or what comes from my mother. So I'm an inheritor of oral tradition and knowledge, which just like my sister, I try to supplement with my own research and my own work into that area. And when my mother was healing or helping others, she didn't distinguish between, oh, this is Javanese medicine or this is Malay medicine. But one of the things I noticed when it comes to what is being described strongly as Malay medicine tend to involve a lot of the leaves, like obat priok, a lot of leaves, a lot of stems. That is based on my observation, right? But in a recent sharing I attended where some of the old manuscripts were studied and looking at some ingredients, I was also intrigued by the idea that we live in the same region, so that definitely that knowledge of the use of certain herbs or roots or rhizomes or gingers or turmeric, that knowledge gets around, and you can also have access to it in the region. For example, the common use of lempoyang, right? I was really intrigued when I saw that being mentioned, the use of lempoyang, and how lempoyang is also one of the key Javanese ingredients in creating jamu. And lempoyang is a way, possibly, if I'm not mistaken, my memory correct me, is used to help with mainly the digestive system, increasing appetite and easing the stomach. I may be wrong, but the distinguishing again that from my mother learned about the air, masuk angin, so that's where you need to urut it out or keep the body warm so that the angin, the air is being exposed out. In terms of the meridian, in terms of Chinese medicine, not so much. But I enjoy massage a lot. So when go to the Chinese massage therapists and they press here, it is something the same. How we do it, pressing, especially the kerik or the Chinese, I can't remember the name. They use the kerik is something similar to release for us, it's understanding of releasing the air. But I think in Chinese one, it means more of invigorating the blood flow and getting it excited. So while I did not grow up learning that there's a very specific type, but we have this idea of the masuk angin, keluar angin, panas, the idea of one of the things that my mom always reminded me is that when we massage, especially massage, just like in any practices, there is the opening, and there is that healing, and there is that closing. So when someone who needs therapy and just go for massage one time, definitely you will not feel good because you don't have you open up your body, but you didn't go into the healing process and you didn't go into the closing. And the timing also has to be some form of synchronized. For example, if the first day you go on the morning, subsequent days is good to go at the same timing. And when I listened this from my godfather who is into Tai Chi and all the points in the body, he also shared with me the idea of where your blood flow based on the timing of the day and when is a good time. So when I put these things together, I say, hey, that is also something that has been taught through. But we should not forget the fact that the Chinese has been in the region for quite some time. Also that knowledge and interaction over the centuries do have an impact and influence. Just like Javanese medicine can influence Malay medicine, and the interaction has been discussed in that presentation I heard, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, where the interaction actually brings forth new ideas about ways to heal. So I can't really say there is a distinguished thing, but from my observation, there are a lot of similarities. There are some probably observable, but again, one thing I learned is that what you see is not usually the full picture until you go into the field and realize that, hey, it's not a small pond, it's a big ocean that we need to tread.
Yes, talking about the big ocean, we must always think that this region was a center of trade, whereby it was a nexus of Chinese traders, Indian traders, and all sorts, looking for many things. And I think the confluence of different ethnicities, I think, definitely have influenced many things about our approaches to health in this region. There was a question regarding this. You mentioned about your mom, your mother, late mother, and she giving you all this information and knowledge. Do different Javanese families or communities worldwide, do they have different approaches to traditional wellness, like different ingredients? Any examples you can share?
Okay. It was in my initial exploration about trying to find other families that I begin to understand that different families take on much more towards different types of jamu. So for example, when I grew up, I know of cekok, which is a bitter medicine, actually to help you improve your appetite when you are young, but it's usually done as a kind of punishment when you're naughty. So when you're naughty, you don't actually get punished because the cekok can help your body becomes better. Then, of course, you have the kunyit asam. And when I started to get very active in school, that was when my mother introduced me to the jamu beras kencur. She made it for me, and she even made different formulas at one point where she told me, for this formula, it's only for you. She has designed that specific formula. This bottle you can share with your friends, anybody can drink, but for this one, it's for you. Then another occasion where she tells me that, okay, for this bottle I make for you is to drink in the morning, this one is to at night. I said, what's the difference? Okay, the night one has a bit more kunyit because turmeric is known for his healing properties, right? Where the other one for the morning is much more kencur, that is more invigorating and like a stimulant. So for my family, I know of beras kencur, kunyit asam, cekok, and some other poultices and pastes that I've shared earlier. Then I encountered a family at the old Malay village, and they were focusing on the key ingredient, which is temulawak. right? And they sell nothing but from temulawak, what are the added ingredients in that. So that family specializes in temulawak and focus. And that's where I begin to think that there's a possibility that many families are holding on to different formulas that they pass down from generation to generation, right? And it is actually the gathering of these different recipes that will create a compendium. But now it's not that hard to learn because you go on the internet, there is a lot of recipes being shared, there's a lot of videos being shared on how to make simple recipes. Of course, as you add on others, it becomes very difficult. So I would like to, I tend to see that certain families hold on to certain recipes much more strongly, while others, I may, let's say example, from A to E, I may hold to A and B, another family A and D, another family C and E, and so forth. So for example, the jamu that I got from a friend of mine, Radia, that runs From Nature. So she has her own family recipes, and the formulations are all very different. So I do another supplier also, Kunyat Asam the same, but different formula and different proportioning of the ingredients. So it's not just about the specialization in different types of jamu, but also how you proportion the ingredients. Yeah, and that's something that we have to really learn and find out. And again, when I asked my mother, how do you know how much to put? Just know lah. So the idea of cultivating the rasa to actually know and interact with the person that you're making the jamu for does play a big part in the whole process.
Thank you. I think with the advent of course, internet and YouTube and sharing of all these videos and the democratization of all this information, I think it's readily available. I think we can see that many families also have all this information. There is a question regarding this, and this person who's asked this question also had attended the talk yesterday. It was very good of you, yeah. And he had asked, okay, so similar to your talk about nasi ambeng yesterday, is there any gatekeeping in the community regarding authentic jamu or medicinal treatments? Is this good or bad?
Gatekeeping. When I thought of starting something with my sibling on focusing on jamu, and I wrote to HSA, the reply I got was that because it's herbal medicine, right? Didn't go into heavy pharmaceuticals, and it's all natural blends. There was no requirement to submit. But I also learned from a friend, I think, who also shared that you can actually send your formulas to get tested by HSA to know the ingredients. The trend in the sector tends to be one where something happened, then there is a ban on a certain jamu products. And when there is a ban on the jamu product, you tend to see that it is all tend to be those that are not made fresh, right? Because in reality, when I make my fresh jamu, after 3 or 4 days, I tend not to be able to consume it anymore because it has lost its potency, it has changed its form, the taste has changed, the smell has changed. So in order for the jamu on the shelf to last longer, definitely some other chemicals are being added to that. And when you add other chemicals that can be harmful because they want to, sometimes the chemicals that they put in steroids so that you feel that the effect is very fast. No, the reality about jamu is that the effect is not so fast. If it's very fast, then it's very suspicious, right? Because when you take it in the natural form, the dosage of the potent ingredients are all very small, right? So if it works very fast for you and you say, well, it's a miracle thing, then something is wrong with that concoction already. Like even for me, my whole body is used to it. It takes me about few hours, even 1 or 2 days to feel the difference. So if I always get reminded that I've forgotten to take my jamu when my joint starts to stiffen. Then when I take, I still have to wait for 1 or 2 days before the effects comes in to loosen the joints again. Because, like I said again, the active ingredients in naturally made jamu tend to be in very small doses. And you can't also consume a lot in a day, like once in the day, in the morning, or in the evening. And also depends on your body.
Yes. So I think adding on to that, think about supplements, herbal medicine that has immediate effects. I think I do see it in some of my patients, and then we get very suspicious if the person has taken something and has miraculous properties, which would then be considered as a medicine and can only be prescribed by a doctor here. But yes, so I think these are all points that are very, very interesting. There's a question from an anonymous person. As jamu is usually done by trial by error or passed down orally, would there be a definitive recipe book, or are all the recipes mostly considered to be, are there recipes that are considered as a base?
Yeah, there are some recipes as a base. For example, kunyit asam. The basic recipe is tamarind and turmeric, right? For a start, you can put it the same amount of ingredients. Again, the measurement is not very clear. Like for me, it's always based on the palm size. So, and that also relates to you, because I learned if your body is bigger, you need a bigger dosage, right? I don't know. So there is no, of course, when you go into the internet and find a recipe, there will be measurements. There is a lot. Even the book that I showed earlier on jamu by Susan Jen Beers, she did collect a lot of simple recipes in that book. And that is based on a lot of research and also known recipes that have been used quite commonly by others. So for example, the basic recipe for kunyit asam is just kunyit asam. If you want, for me, I would drink just kunyit asam. I can take the bitterness, I'm used to it. But those who cannot, they will need to add in some form of sweetener, like honey or brown sugar or gula jawa, you know, gula melaka. Yeah, but for me, I don't. I always ask for my jamu to be made very plain, just turmeric and tamarind. Then there's temulawak, another base. Then beras kencur, another base. Beras kencur basic ingredients is just kencur or cekur and rice. But when I drink it, my mom will just make for me the blends of kencur and ground rice, water. But when I drink it, I will add an egg yolk and good quality honey. So it gives me a full meal. I have my carbohydrates, I have my protein, I have my sugar and starch inside, plus the stimulant, which is kencur. So there is that basic. So temulawak, kunyit asam is one base, and then beras kencur is another base. Then I think there are about a total of 8 different types. There's also the infused teas, using leaves as another base to build on your jamu. So for example, if you get the jamu from nature, while it is kunyit asam, she has added quite a lot of other ingredients, right? So that is where families differ in terms of what they add on from the base. So there is that base. So if you are new and if you can take those mixtures, it's fine. But if you really want to explore how your body reacts, I always suggest take those with the most basic formula and then you build on from there to see what needs to be done. So and usually I advise that so that you know which works for you and which doesn't. If you take 7 different types of things inside, you will not know which one works for you unless you go by process of elimination. You know, I take this and see how it feels and add on this. You know, what is the difference that I feel?
I'm glad you you brought the topic of honey. Okay, there is a question by Siti Ismail. I think she's the only one who has identified herself. Thank you very much, Siti, for asking this question. It has been an informative session for her, and she does practice drinking asam kunyit, jamu, but does the type of honey, is it important? And she was told that it improves blood circulation. Have any comments about that?
I mean, adding the honey improves blood circulation or the kunyit asam?
I think the type of honey. I think she's asking.
Yeah, I've not ventured much into honey because when I go into the world of honey, I realize it's another big world altogether. You know, it depends on where the bee goes to for the pollination and what kind of honey it builds. But I always like to use tualang honey, you know, honey from the forest, because of this idea that most of the ingredients that we get are from that forest. When you get something from the same place, is much more likely to be compatible, right? So I go in along that understanding. So I would tend to take those honey that are found within this region, just like tualang honey and those from Sumatra and Aceh and so forth. Because I don't know. No, because in the traditional formulation, it's unlikely for them to be able to get honey from other places. It's likely that it's much more localized and that they create the formula as such. But for me, the adding of the honey to the jamu, for me personally, is just to sweeten and make it easier to drink. I like to hit some say my jamu raw. I even do a cold press to my honey for my jamu ingredients, where I get the full concoction and realize that it was too strong. So when I do a cold press using those kind of slow blenders, I tend to reduce the ingredients a bit. Because once I tried to use the same amount and suddenly I took the brass kencur and my body just shot up and the water kept flowing out through I know it was too strong. So I stopped, drink a lot of water to clear, to dilute it in my body, and then reduce the formulas early. So while it is trial and error, there are some basic ingredients and quantities that you do, and there's some limitations that is suggested, like drink once a day, half a cup, and that should keep you going for the rest of the day, right? And that is generally, and the kind of amount that you have are not very much, like one packet, $2, a kunyit could actually make 2 drinks out of it, and so forth. So in terms of honey, I don't have classroom, but I have my own, if you want to call it, school of thought,
Okay.
of putting things that are more likely to be compatible.
I see. So there is a question regarding, I think it was also about authenticity, and there's a question by Anonymous. You mentioned commercially sold jamu has artificial ingredients, but at what point does tweaking the recipe get to a point where it stops being jamu? Any limit?
Okay. The thing is, if you look, even Susan Chambers, who write that English book on jamu, did say in a book that there are so many different understandings of what jamu is. And the field is so wide that I don't know whether we can ever hit the end of the world, like the Pirates of the Caribbean, you say to the end of the world. Whether we can actually hit that point for jamu and say, hey, now from this onwards, it's no longer jamu. Right? It's something else. Because if you look at it, it covers poultices, pastes, oils, right? Then the different blends and different formulations, and now people have added things like apple cider inside, testing it out and then see how it goes. So, and the basic definition of jamu is a herbal drink, right? So when does it stop being jamu? I don't know. But if we look at the different types, there are 8 basic types. So probably that provides some kind of ring fencing. That's how you build the jamu. And a lot of even the new innovations is actually based on at least these 8 different types, for which I've mentioned 3. Right? And I think the other one is just a ginger-based formulation. So that is one. So when you, and the other one, so you have the kunyit asam base, the kencur base, the ginger base, then you have the temulawak base, and also the lempoyang base. So this create a certain base for you to do up your building blocks. And because there are many possibilities, it shows the need to actually gain a lot of knowledge. I was fortunate to buy a book that kind of put a lot of the plants together. I managed to browse but not fully understand it. Because the other aspect of learning about it is that it's a challenge to actually learn from a book. You need to look at the plant and see it from the leaf to the roots, And how many of us have the opportunity to do so? We don't have that much land. And when I tried to grow kencur, for example, in my HDB flat, the potency is so different. Because kencur requires a very specific climate and microclimate actually in order to grow well.
Very, very interesting points, and welcome to the worldwide jamu, right? Yeah, there's just so much things to cover in terms of jamu itself. These 2 questions, I think they are related, okay? We shall cover these 2 together. Have there been any modifications to these traditional recipes or rituals as the Javanese community travel or migrate to various parts of the world? And then the other question is, has jamu evolved over the years to address more contemporary ailments and issues like physiotherapy or mental health?
Okay, I think touching on while we tend to look at tradition and seeing that as something from the rear, right? if I'm not mistaken, can't remember the scholar who wrote about the past is a foreign place or a foreign country. It's like looking at the back of a rearview mirror and looking at the past and how it changes, and the past is actually from our imagination. So when we tend to look at tradition as something, when we look at traditional knowledge as something that is from the past, I think we are missing the plot quite a bit. Now, looking at the past and then saying that what's next for the future is sometimes based on the assumption that we know that much about the past to know how to go to the future, to how to build it and move forward. But it seems that based on what I've shared earlier and the immense side of knowledge, we have not even fully understand the traditional knowledge. So and that in itself is the future, because like I shared earlier about how the prince at the palace in the Kraton sharing their two volumes of manuscript on jamu formulations that they have, and they just took one formulas and tried to work it out. Out of 25 ingredients, more than half are no longer existing. We need to rediscover those ingredients. And in those ingredients could be actually something new that will help us today. But unfortunately, with the burning of the forest and the reduction and diminishing of our biodiversity because of the burning of forests and changing its land use, we are losing a lot, tremendous lot. So each time I see the forest gets burned, I actually cry inside and say, what actually have we lost? So when we talk about the environment, it's not just about the environment that's affected, it is our own life. It is the cure, the remedy for any things that we have. And when we bring forth the question about mental health, I'm still trying to find this formula. I happened to drink this jamu when I was doing my field work in Java. Right? I have a mental health condition. I've been diagnosed with panic disorder, and I deal with anxiety a lot. There was this jamu I drink that calms me down a lot. I was given to me, I drink. Initially, I thought it was a joke. You know, they said you look very anxious, and take this and then drink it. Yeah, I drink that. I don't think I'm gonna fall asleep. And the next thing was like, boom, and I slept. And when I woke up, I don't have the usual hangover that you have from sleeping very long and very deep. Right? So I'm still trying to find that formula. The problem is, every time when my mom used to send me to go to that place to get the jamu, it was late at night. So after when she passed on, I tried to look for it in the day. I can't recognize the place. So I'm just trying to, so now I've been searching the internet, looking at the name that I'm familiar with, trying to look at the formulas and try to see and try to make it for myself. So there are, in the jamu, if we talk about mental health, we have to look at what is the condition that we want to deal with. If it's anxiety, you want calmness, then you look for something that calms you down. And sometimes you don't have to go far. I mean, things like chamomile tea can actually calm you down, right? So we're looking at remedies. You don't have to look, especially when I'm going to look at Javanese medicine, I'm going to look at Malay medicine. Sometimes I like to drink lohango. It cools me down, going to TCM and find what are the things that can actually benefit me. And that is actually, I hope, will happen in Singapore, because we have a wealth of knowledge from traditional Chinese medicine. We have a wealth of knowledge that is also quite structured with Ayurvedic medicine, with Ayurvedic association. So it's just what is lacking is the equivalent of Jamu and Malay medicine to form something like that, and together. But again, the challenge comes because of the stigma of old tradition, of taboos, and so forth, and all this adulteration of off-the-shelf jamu. I'm not saying that all jamus are like that. It's just that, most often when you see jamu that has been banned, they tend to be adulterated and from the shelves. So I tend to avoid ready-made jamu and just drink freshly made ones. And it's not that difficult, actually. I shared earlier where you can get the ingredients.
Sounds like a call for action for all the jamu people of interest to come together and then have more research on this. I hope the one that you took, the jamu, is not suspicious also.
Yeah, I hope so, because it was too fast, and there was a kick to it. So maybe that's why I'm prevented from finding it.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so the last question that we have is with regards to this wellness, okay? With wellness being a lucrative industry, Do you think jamu will become commercialized in Western countries, or is it too niche?
No, I think the whole idea is growing. All it needs just, I mean, for example, look at how tempeh has grown globally, as part of vegan food and so forth. So the whole idea of whether or not jamu can be globalized, it is possible. It is possible that we could actually make it known. And it is growing because as I visit Indonesia, much more recently, the last trip was in March 2020. I came back just in time for a thing. I see a lot of new ways of packaging for jamu. So it's no longer about the jamu gendong, the ladies. So you have very nicely bottled jamu drinks, with very trendy branding, and the bottles look very nice, So that market is there because now people are looking for something that is fresh, something that is healthy. The wellness market is there, and our idea and my push for the idea of the kitchen as pharmacy is actually to move away from that niche. My sharing of jamu kunyit asam, if you cook Malay dishes, you always have kunyit, you always have asam in your household. So with that and just that basic, and then you add with even normal sugar to sweeten up, it's a good start, right? So when we think of the kitchen as being a source of that remedy, and these ingredients are also quite readily available from supermarket. I think Sheng Siong is there, Giant, everything there. Even you don't have to even go to Geylang Serai market, even kencur also, but in small amounts. Because every time if I go to my market in Clementi to buy kencur, I bought the entire stock for the whole month, just to make me a 1 liter bottle of jamu and so on. So they may not have that many stock, but it could be found. So look for, usually the one who sells things like some of the more common jamu ingredients are either the Malay shop seller or Indian shop. Indian shop will tend to sell these things like even kencur and some. You try your luck and check out what is the available in your nearby market.
Yeah, I know your talk today is actually you're trying to move away from jamu, but I think
Yes,
there's
yes,
a lot
yeah.
of interest in this area.
Yeah, I mean the question itself revealed there's a growing interest. So we are talking about whether you can grow, whether the question today actually reflect that there's a bit more interest, right? And members of our community has a natural affiliation to it, and something I hope that you take more advantage, because if you look at, as long as you look at the name of the ingredient and it still does not have an English word, that means the Western world doesn't know about it yet. So which means that local pharmaceutical companies can actually leverage on that. And I think some has, some that great for. But one thing that I should like to promote is do it fresh. So we're talking about us having community gardens, right? Don't only plant vegetables. Plant some other herbs that we could readily plant, except for kencur. Kencur, very peculiar plant. I think some other plants as well. For example, halia bara is only nicely, I think, at certain places it grows well, other places it doesn't grow well. So it depends. But I think we can leverage on that. With the use of hydroponics and new agro-technology, we can look at how to actually grow these herbs in a better way. So there's a lot of potential of research and exploration, and just to rediscover again, because a lot of knowledge has been lost.
Many many areas to discover and research upon. I actually wanted to end on that note, but I think there's one burning question on Facebook from Mazlan Boyamin. Usually, for every morning, he will make his own jamu shot. It is fresh turmeric, fresh ginger roots, and he will add gula jawa and a little bit of black pepper and also fresh lime juice. Is it good for anti-inflammation? Need your advice on this, and he has been drinking it for a while.
My question to him is, has it been good for him? Because he has to know that. Like for me, I know I don't need anything else. I just need my kunyit asam in the morning. Then once in a while, I feel that urge, that intuition, I need my beras kencur. then I will just add it in, right? But much depends on how he has actually built that formulation. No, did he build that formulation based on something he get from somewhere, or something that he builds on towards doing that, and who does he talk to in learning about that? But I think the basic ingredients he mentioned, kunyit, tamarind is also anti-inflammatory, right? Turmeric also anti-inflammatory. But if he really wants the turmeric, he need to look for ibu kunyit, the main stem. If you really want the potency of the kunyit, go to Gelang Serai or anywhere where you can find ibu kunyit. So that is the main stem for which all these smaller ones that you get from the market grows from. So that's the ibu kunyit that you need to use, because that is, the taste is a bit stronger, it's a bit sharper in that sense, and from there you know the concentration of that potency. So even, for example, if I were to buy an ibu kunyit juice, and at City Flower Power, she does sell bottles of ibu kunyit that are already blended, so you don't have to make your fingers all yellow. One of the things that I struggle with in making my own kunyit is that I will have like very nice henna look, you know, if only I can find a pattern to make it look nicer. But there is, you can buy the blend, and what I do sometimes, just half-boiled egg, and then just put 1 teaspoon of that ibu kunyit blended thing, and then it keeps me for the day. And then there are also different schools of thoughts, like him putting pepper. Some thought says that as long as there's fats, that's why when you put it in soft-boiled egg, the fats is there, right? They're putting that to kind of make the cumin much more active. Some say put pepper. Like for my mother's school of thought that she taught me, you just need to put a bit of pepper to activate the active ingredients. And you put it just before you drink it, so that it creates that. So, but some say that doesn't work. You need to, as long as you got fats, okay. Some say you don't need that at all. So, because it has not been fully studied, and even though the research that suggests, yes, this works, but usually for this kind of research, once the paper is published, it stops there, right? And the sample size is not that big enough to kind of substantiate the claims itself. So what I always get in terms of research paper from places like Cyber, Science Direct, and now all these stories, is that you get a research that done a certain sample size and it stops there, and there's no continuity. That's why I like what Professor El-Fahmi is doing at Institute Technology Bandung, you know, trying to expand that scope of the research into looking at, you know, how we can actually use the jamu ingredients, you know, to really understand. And what I hope to look forward to, if I have the opportunity, is not to study in the isolated ingredients, but the combination of it. So instead of study of the effectiveness of turmeric or effectiveness of tamarind, I want to study the effectiveness of the kunyit asam basic formula. No? How does it work actually?
Many more questions to go. I think we can even have 1 more hour, but I think looking at the time, we have come to the end, I think, of the whole series of lectures and talks. I would really love to delve further. Of course, I think for Mr. Mazlan,
I think for those of you who really want to know about jamu, and I just know, I still just knowing a speck of the salt in the whole ocean, but I can still help you to get along. Do sign up for the workshops that is not hosted by National Heritage Board. It's coming in June and July. Look out for the dates, and then we can meet up, talk. As for those who are on Facebook, you can find me, if you can find me, and then you can just drop me a note if I can help you with any queries you have, or refer you, or forward you to the people who are a bit much more expert, much more knowledgeable than me, to be frank. My knowledge compared to them is so little, that, you know, that they can still continue to get in touch. I apologize if I have not responded, I have not answered some of the questions, you know, because of the way I think and my mind flow. Sometimes it goes from here back and forth to Java. I do not know how. And coming back here, the only thing that can travel now is my mind.
It's in your roots, yeah. So on that note, I think we would like to thank Surya again for such a wonderful talk and spending your Sunday afternoon, with us and your audience online. I think if you've stayed with us this far, it means that you've been with us for 2 hours. We have come to the end of this whole series, and also I think the end of the Singapore Heritage Fest also, yes. So if there were any issues and challenges that we had in the past, yesterday and today, we do really apologize and hope to do better next time. If there is any feedback, do drop us a line to the official website for Malay Heritage Centre or to the Facebook. I think the relevant people will do their best to answer the questions. So I think with that, I shall end here. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for spending your time. We hope to see you around. And do keep safe and keep COVID away. And with that, I shall thank you. May peace be upon you. Thank you. And Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yep.